The education system in this country is broken. And I'm not saying that as somebody looking from the outside. No, no, no. I'm saying that as someone who's in it. Listen, I'm in my 4th year of teaching. I was a pair before that, sub before. I've done student teaching, and I've seen this from different angles. And what I can tell you is this: we as teachers are exhausted. We are underpaid, and teachers are overworked. And half the time, it feels like we're being asked to do everything except just teach. So today, I want to talk about what is really wrong with education right now, why so many teachers are burned out, and what actually needs to change. Welcome to another edition of the Adam Kennedy Show, where sports and entertainment collide, and this is your weekly escape briefing. But today, we're stepping into something real. So let's get into it. Listen, I think one of the biggest problems when people talk about education is that a lot of people really don't understand what teaching feels like today. And teachers, you understand what I'm talking about. They see teachers, they see the classroom, they see the students, and they think, okay, the teacher goes in there, teaches the lesson, gives out some work, maybe grades some papers, and then goes home. That's not what it is. It's not even close. Being a teacher right now is fucking exhausting. And I don't mean like exhausting like, oh, that was a long day. I mean exhausting by the time Friday hits, you're drained. You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to talk to nobody. You don't want to do anything. You just want to sit at home, turn off your brain, and recover. That is how a lot of teachers feel. And the reason is because teaching is not just teaching anymore. It's this: handling, going to meetings, doing this paperwork, incorporating this new strategy, track data, differentiate the lesson, make sure you document that, communicate with parents, adjust for this student, accommodate for this, make sure you're doing this with fidelity, make sure you're following the curriculum, make sure you're ready for testing, make sure your room looks like this, make sure your lessons sound like this, make sure you hit all these standards, and somewhere in the middle of that, oh, you're supposed to actually teach. That's the problem. It feels like teachers are being asked to do everything, and I mean everything. And then when they're exhausted, people wonder why. Why are teachers burning out after 5 years? Why are people who have taught for 10, 15, 20 years saying, I'm done? Why are the younger teachers getting in and realizing real quick, this is not sustainable? That's why. Because it's just not stressful. It's nonstop. And I think that's the part people don't always understand. Teachers are not just tired because the job is hard. They're tired because it feels like the job keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the support does not match the weight of what's being asked. And that's what makes it fucking brutal. And then on top of all that, teachers are underpaid. Let's be real. That part needs to be said directly. Teachers are underpaid. I don't care how people try to dress it up. I don't care if somebody says, well, you get summers off. Well, you know what you signed up for. Well, it's your calling. You were meant to do this. That sounds good until you're the one in the building every day dealing with it all. Teachers should be making way much more money than they do. And I mean way more. And I'm dead ass serious when I say teachers should start out at $100,000 a year. That should be the floor. That should be the bare minimum. Not after 10 years, not after 20 years. Starting salary. Because if you really look at what teachers are expected to do and what they deal with, what they carry mentally, emotionally, physically every single week, then yes, they should be paid like professionals who are carrying on one of the most important jobs in this country. Because they are. They are. It's a very important job. And another huge problem is support. Or should I say lack of support. If you ask teachers right now if they feel supported by administration or the higher ups, I think a lot of them will tell you no. And that's just not some random complaint. That's real. Because a lot of times what happens is teachers tell people what's going on. They explain what they're seeing. They say this strategy is not working. They say this system is not working. This expectation is unrealistic. And the response is not, okay, let's listen, let's adjust, let's do something different. The response is usually something like, well, did you do this? Did you try it this way? Did you implement exactly like this? Did you circle back? Did you reteach it? Did you document? Did you follow all the steps? And it becomes this thing where the teacher is saying, no, I'm telling you this is not working because trust me, we do all the things that are asked and go back and redo it again. That's what happens. And the response back is basically, well, do it again. We've done it again over and over and over and not working. And that is frustrating. That is exhausting. And that makes it feel like nobody's actually listening. And that's a big part of why teachers feel undersupported. Because support is just not saying we appreciate you in an email or well, here's lunch for this month. No, support is actually listening when teachers tell you what is happening in the classroom. That is real support. And right now, too many teachers do not feel that. And I'll say this too. A lot of the job now feels like behavior management more than teaching. And that is one of the biggest issues. We as teachers, we just want to teach. We want to motivate these students. We want to help them grow. We want to teach what we're supposed to teach them. But more teachers got into this because they care about the students. They care about learning. They want to make a difference. But most of your energy is going into managing behaviors, redirecting constantly, stopping disruptions, trying to keep the room together, trying to get the kids to stay locked in long enough to learn. Then it starts to feel like the actual teaching part of the job is getting pushed aside because you're doing all this other stuff. And when that happens over and over again, week after week, year after year, people burn out. And that is reality. That's what it really feels like being a teacher right now. It feels like too much. And a lot of people on the outside still don't get it. And it's not everybody. There's some people that don't understand. But now that's the day-to-day reality. But the bigger issue is a lot of this is coming from a system that does not make sense anymore. So let's talk about the actual education system itself, because that's where a lot of the problem starts and then it trickles down. The education system in this country is broken. Let's be real. It's broken. And I know that sounds harsh, but I mean it. It's broken. And it's broken in a lot of ways. One of the bigger problems is that too many of the people making decisions are too far removed from what classrooms actually look like today. That is a major issue. They go do research, they go to meetings, they come up with ideas, they create new approaches, they roll out these new initiatives, and then they send them down to the teachers and expect the teachers to make it work. And the whole time I'm thinking, when's the last time you were actually in the classroom? Not walking through for 10 minutes, not observing from the back, not reading a report, actually teaching anyone, actually being in the room, actually dealing with students, actually trying to make all this work in real time. Because if it's been 20 years or even 15 years or even 10 years ago, it's not the same. It's different now. And that is part of the disconnect. People from the top keep pushing all this stuff down, but they are not the ones in the trenches every day trying to make it work. The teachers are. So if you really want to know what needs to change, you ask the teachers, not the people sitting in meetings all day. Ask the people who are in the classroom every day. That is where and another major problem is state testing. I do not believe in it the way it is being used. I really don't. Because too much education now revolves around state testing. That's what you hear about constantly. Testing, scores, data, growth, benchmarks. How are we doing on this? How are we doing on that? Right? And the reason that stuff gets pushed so hard is because it ties into funding. And that's what makes it so fucking frustrating. It stops being about what is actually best for students. It starts becoming about numbers. And I hate that. I fucking really do. I don't think state testing defines a student's future. I tell my own kids not to stress about it. Just do your best, take the test, move on. That test does not define who you are. It does not define what you become. And I think too much pressure gets put on students and teachers over something that a lot of time does not really reflect the full picture anyway, right? And another part of the system that is broken is curriculum, especially when it comes to how some things are being taught right now. Math is one of the biggest examples that I can think of. Math today, a lot of times, makes no sense. And I know what people say. They say it's about creative thinking. They say it's about deeper understanding. They say students need to show their thinking. Okay, I get the intention, but sometimes the actual result is that you're making something way more complicated than it needs to be. That's the issue. I remember when my daughters were in elementary school and they had the newer math, and I'm sitting here like, okay, you can solve it this way. It's way quicker. And the response, no, you have to show it this way. You have to explain it this way. You have to break it all the way down. And I'm like, but why are we making this harder than it needs to be? I get some explanation matters. I get that understanding matters. But if I can get the answer correctly in 2 steps over here and you're making me do 7 steps over there, then what are we even doing? Right? And that's how a lot of teachers feel too. Because here's the biggest problem with it. If the teacher can barely understand how to explain it, then how is the student supposed to learn it? That's the issue. If the adult in the room is sitting there trying to figure out how to explain this overcomplicated way to get the answer, then what chance does the student have? This is what frustrates teachers, because it's just not about learning content. It's about having to teach content in a way that often feels unnatural and harder than it needs to be. And that problem doesn't stop with math. No, reading has problems too. Phonics, nonsense words, all these different approaches. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what are we doing? As a kid, I don't remember this being this difficult. I don't remember all this extra stuff. I remember learning words, sounding them out, spelling, reading, and building from there. Now it feels like there's so many different layers and systems and labels and processes that sometimes it feels like we're losing the actual goal. And the goal is that kids should be able to read. They should be able to spell. They should be able to write. If you have kids in upper grades who are reading far below than what they should be, then that is a problem. That's a major problem. And it's a real problem. There is adults reading at kid levels today, this day and age. If a student is in a high school reading at an elementary level, that is a failure of the system. The student was failed. And yes, part of it can be home too. Absolutely. It takes both. School support matters and home support matters. It has to be a collaboration. But the system itself is still broken if that student keeps moving through it without getting what they actually need. And that's another issue I have. Sometimes it feels like we're worried about the wrong things. We're worried about testing. We're worried about looking like we're doing the right thing. We're worried about saying the right buzzwords. But are the students actually reading? Are they actually writing or typing? Can they actually do math? Can they think? Can they problem solve? Can they communicate? Can they function in the real world after school? Because that's what this is supposed to be about. Preparing them for life. Preparing them for life. And I don't think the system does that well enough right now. I really don't. And then there's this issue of feedback. This one makes teachers go crazy. You get asked your opinion. You fill out the survey, you give feedback, you explain what is happening, and then they come back and basically say, thanks for your feedback, but we're going to do this anyway. Then why did you ask? Seriously. Why ask if you're never going to listen? That's the kind of stuff that makes people feel checked out. Because it becomes performative. It becomes the appearance of collaboration without actual collaboration. And teachers see right through that. So yes, the system is broken. Testing, curriculum, support, priorities. Decision makers too far removed from reality of the classroom. Teachers being asked for feedback and ignored. It is broken in a lot of ways. And people know that. They just don't always want to say it directly. So today, I will. So if all that is broken, then the next question is obvious. What actually needs to change? Because it's easy to rant. It's easy to complain. But if we are going to say the system is broken, then we also need to say what needs to happen next. If you really want to fix education, the first thing you do is ask teachers. That's it. That's the starting point. Ask teachers, not just the administrators, not just district people, not just people at the top. Ask the teachers. Ask elementary teachers, ask middle school teachers, ask high school teachers. Ask the people who are in the classrooms every single day. Ask the people who are down in the trenches, because they know what is working and what's not. They know what students actually need. They know what expectations are realistic and what expectations are nonsense. If you want to fix the education system, you have to ask the people who are living inside of it every day. That should be common sense. The second thing is teachers need to be paid properly. And I already said it, but I'm going to say it again because I mean it. Teachers should start at $100,000 a year. Minimum. That should be the floor. And if you get your master's, there should be a bump up. If you get your doctorate, That should be another bump up, because if the country really believes education matters, then pay teachers like education matters. Stop talking about how important teachers are if you're not willing to compensate them like they're important. Because the truth is, teachers are expected to carry a huge load while being paid way less than what other jobs demand. And that has to change. Another thing that has to change is what we actually teach. Schools should do a better job of preparing students for the real life, the real world. That means more practical skills, more financing classes, more investing classes, more real world application, more project based learning. That is something I really believe in. Project based learning makes sense. Give students a real world problem, have them work it through, have them collaborate, have them come up with solution, and then have them present it. That makes sense to me. That's useful. That feels like something that can actually prepare students for life after school. And I also think some classes should have never been taken away. Computer class should still be a thing. And I was saying, in my school district I work in, they no longer have computer class in elementary school. So absolutely, students need to know how to type. They need to know how to use the presentation software like Google Slides, Google Docs, Sheets. They need to know how to do all the things. They need to know how to function with technology in a way that's actually useful. That fucking matters. So it blows my mind why they get rid of that class. It just blows my mind why. We're in this day and age of technology, and it makes no sense. You have to keep art, you have to keep music, you have to keep PE, you have to keep library, and you need to have technology class, computer lab, whatever you want to call it. Keep the classes that give students different ways to learn and different ways to grow. Those things matter too. And yes, I still believe in writing. I still believe in spelling. I still believe students should know how to write clearly. I still think cursive should be taught. And I know there's teachers teaching cursive. When you get to that grade level, they're teaching cursive, but it should be part of the curriculum, writing and writing in cursive. I know we live in a world filled of typing and screens and technology. Yes, students need those skills too, but they should still know how to write. That matters. Spelling matters. Reading matters. Basic math matters. And some of this stuff should be simpler, not more complicated. That's just how I feel. There should be a lot more trade pathways and practical pathways for students. Not every student is going to go to a 4-year college, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they failed. Schools should do a better job of showing students all the different paths they can take after graduation. College, trade, creative careers, entrepreneurship, different opportunities. Make school feel more connected to life, because right now, too much of it feels disconnected. And here's my unpopular opinion. Actually, it shouldn't even be an unpopular, because it probably is. The people who are least qualified to tell teachers how to do their job are often the people making the biggest decisions. That's how I feel. And that's the problem. Because if you're not in the trenches, you're not in the room, you're not living this every day, then there are limits to what you really know what teachers need. That doesn't mean nobody at the top has value. That's not what I'm saying. That doesn't mean leadership doesn't matter. What I'm saying is this: if the people at the top want to fix education, then they need to stop acting like teachers are the last people to ask. Teachers should be the first people you ask. That's my stance. Because teachers know. We know what students need. We know what is broken. We know what gets in the way. We know what would help. We are there every day. So if you want to fix things, just ask us. Really ask us, listen to us, and then actually do something with what we say. Because until that happens, the system is still going to stay broken, and teachers are going to keep getting burnt out, and students are going to keep getting caught in the middle. And that's the truth, and that is not fair to the students, because at the end of it, we are failing the students. When it comes down to this, we are failing the students. So yeah, the education system is broken. And I know it's a strong thing to say, but I believe it, and I think a lot of you out there believe it too. I think teachers are underpaid. I think they're overworked. I think they're managing too much and being supported too little. And I think too many decisions are being made by people who are too far removed from the classroom. And I think if you really want to fix education, you start by listening to the people who are in it every day. the teachers. So salute to all the teachers out there. I know what you're going through. Salute to every educator out there from fucking kindergarten, from pre-K all the way to college. Salute to all of you. So let me know what you think. If you're a teacher, I already know this episode probably hits home. If you're a parent, I love to know what you see from your side. And if you could fix one thing in education right now, what would it be? Until next time, I'm Adam Kennedy. I'm out. Peace.